The thing that surprised me the most was that Florida State was put into that 4 slot. And I did see Josh Pate said if he was the committee, he would have left them outside of 4 and maybe put them in and left that door open. It's hard to imagine them winning and them dropping them out. It's hard to imagine.
It's hard to imagine. I still think it would happen. So a lot from that. So number one, I understand what Pate is saying, but whoever you put in front of them, you would have to do the same thing if you move Florida State back in. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Pate had a good point, I thought.
Okay, what was his point?
You put Ohio State in there knowing they're not playing.
Yeah, they're a
weekend.
placeholder.
Yeah, you could just drop them out.
That would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. Those 13 people inside that room, I don't know if there's a woman on the committee or not, so I'll say people, but I think it's 13 men that I'm upset they're not smart enough to do that, to put a placeholder there.
It's something they've never done before, but it would make sense. And then at 5, 6, 7, you've got teams that are going to be playing this weekend, and you can let that sort itself out. The takeaway for me was, good news for Alabama is Georgia is still number 1.
Right. That's right. I was a little surprised at that too.
And by the way, a number 1 team has never, out of the final ranking, has ever fallen out of the top 4, and they should.
They've lost and stayed in.
Yeah, and I think Georgia should. This is going to be a complete mess Sunday, but leaving Alabama at number 8, it's going to be hard for Alabama to get in this thing.
I disagree. I think all they got to do is win and they're in. And I'm not alone in saying that. Dunaway is not alone in saying that. Scotty's back there shaking his head.
I said yes yesterday.
I know you did,
but I thought there would be a little movement.
Okay.
Here.
After all this was said and done, so Stuart Mandel yesterday, why don't you repeat for those, because we only briefly got to it on the show yesterday. It was something you had read and dug into.
Okay. In the Athletic, Stuart Mandel, he gave, and everyone's doing this, he gave Michigan's win over Iowa.
That's right.
More on that game later. But he gave Michigan over Iowa.
So 3 spots available.
Right. So he locks in Michigan, and then he plays out all the other possible win-loss scenarios, which is 16 of them, of the contenders, the top 8 contender, or the championship games this weekend. 16 scenarios. Georgia, of course, would win 8 of those. Alabama would win in 8 of those. And then all the other possibilities, wins and losses with that. Obviously, Georgia's in easily with all 8 wins. Of the other 8 that Alabama wins the game, they were in every scenario, according to Stuart Mandel. He does that with the knowledge of what the playoff committee uses as criteria. And he said, any scenario you play out, Alabama, if they beat Georgia, is in. And I read that and I sent that out, and you can go see it on social media. You've got to be a member of the Athletic to see the breakdown, but it's very cheap and it's worth it, in my opinion. But I'm like you. There's never been a team 7th or 8th to jump all the way up. I don't know if there's enough movement.
Well,
and still to this day, Brown, I feel like Alabama's bracketed with Texas. That for Alabama to go, Texas would have to go.
Well, the best wins right now in college football are Texas at Alabama, Michigan over Ohio State, and then I would put Washington over Oregon.
Right.
But the best win will ultimately be Alabama over Georgia.
Correct.
If they're able to win that game in Mercedes. But here's the way this thing works to me. Alabama's sitting at 8. Some things are going to take care of themselves. Washington or Oregon will be behind them.
Correct.
We know that.
Yep.
Ohio State is going to be behind them.
Correct.
But this is all if Alabama wins.
Yes.
So
Georgia will be behind them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Michigan, Washington, Oregon winner, Texas, and Florida State are still – Florida State to be 4 spots in front of Alabama. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And Alabama would beat Florida State by 2 touchdowns right now.
Which is why they'll do this. They went out of their way last night, out of their way afterwards when asked about it, is it more deserving or best? They're like, more deserving is not language we use. It's the 4 best teams.
It's hypocritical, though, everything they say.
Yeah. Why is it hypocritical? I mean, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying if they're saying up front, it is not the 4 most deserving. We don't even have that language. That's not language we speak.
And I appreciate that. But then they should be genuine with their release last night, which would have been their first time to judge Florida State without Jordan Travis.
Right.
And they should have been genuine with that and said, okay, without Jordan Travis, Florida State is the 8th best team. They're not Liberty, unbeaten at number 25 or 24. They're 8th.
But I think the problem is you guys are still looking at the ingredients, wanting them to show you the baked cake. This is only the ingredients. The baked cake, the only one that matters is the last one.
A good pull of Nick Saban quotes in July.
You're welcome,
SEC
Jim.
Media Days.
Yeah,
but that's the only one that matters. If they got Florida State 4 today, it does not matter until the final one. That's why
why give us this fluff then?
Because you're saying our argument is Alabama would be in front of Ohio State if what? If what?
if they win.
If they beat Georgia. Well,
Yeah.
they haven't beaten Georgia yet. So why would you have them in front of Florida State right now?
No, but because we were judging Florida State on the team they are now, that's ultimately what we're going
Yeah,
to
what
do.
do you
still
do if
judge-
Florida State wins this game by 14 over Louisville?
You've got a more difficult decision.
Yeah.
You've got a more difficult decision.
Yeah, but I think you've put yourself in a bad situation if the committee.
you know where you put
if I'm
yourself
Book
in a worse
Oregon, I'm like, hey, look, I know Florida State's undefeated, but Alabama's a better team.
That's
we
what they'll
all
say.
watch football.
I think that's what they'll say.
But they should have said that
last
Yes.
night. They
But
should have said it last
They
night.
could have easily
They
said
should
it.
have said, listen, we'll give Florida State, they're still in it.
Right.
They've got a chance to impress the committee against Louisville, a ranked
Right.
team that not as ranked, but they like Alabama, like Texas, they've got to impress
But why do you
us
care if they
with,
say it?
with this team.
Why do you care if they say it last night or next Sunday? What
Because-
does that matter?
Because last week I gave them a pass by what you're saying is we can't look into the future. We can't judge them without Jordan
Right.
Travis until they play a game.
They play one game.
They play the game now.
That's
So
right.
now without Jordan Travis, we watched them play that game against Florida.
We'll get to watch them play
and,
another game.
and we're playing it out.
Yeah.
And now, but they watched that game and they're telling me they're still the fourth best team in the country.
Maybe, but maybe they watched that game and like, okay, we got that wrong. You know, when they played a better team, you know, he struggled a little bit. If they lose, it doesn't matter. But if they win and he struggles a little bit, and they're like, and Alabama beats
But-
Georgia, then they've got the data.
I agree with you.
They've got the data.
I agree with that. Alabama
apparently not.
No.
gets in.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Alabama gets in if they beat Georgia,
I-
which I think is still a big if.
Oh, it's a huge hit.
Right. I'm not sure.
Yes.
You know, all this wasted
Look-
time of discussing can Alabama beat Georgia is a different discussion. But then you explain to the Florida State fans, okay, you judged us without Jordan Travis for a game, and we're still the fourth best team. Now we're going to go beat Louisville,
Right.
a ranked team, not a road non-ranked team. We beat a ranked team in your rankings. We beat them, and now you're going to drop us?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Well, here's what I disagree with you.
Okay.
They're not going to put the four best teams in here.
Well, they may not.
So they're going to go by who deserves to get in.
Now, but let me ask you, base that on what?
Base that on the fact that if Georgia loses and Florida State wins, Florida State's got a better shot at getting into Georgia.
Ralph Russo. Now, Ralph
Georgia, there is no scenario they should be out of this 14 playoff.
Ralph Russo. Do you know who Ralph Russo is? I don't know if you know. He's
I
been
know,
on the
yeah.
show. You know who Ralph Russo is. College football writer for the Associated Press. He lives right here in Birmingham, right? Big SEC guy.
He lives in Birmingham?
No, he lives in New York City.
Oh,
He is
okay.
not a big SEC guy. This is not some SEC bias.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I set him right up. Ralph Russo, after everything came out, there is no need to fathom the SEC champion beating Georgia and not getting in. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Bama wins and it's getting in. In fact, according to Ralph Russo, his opinion, obviously, if Bama wins, it only increases the chances of two SEC teams. I think a lot of people are looking at it and saying what
Well,
you're
they
saying.
should. I mean,
that
let
would
me
be
ask you this.
awesome. That would be awesome.
Okay, so if Alabama wins this game, and
Mhm.
look, I don't think anybody's going to be shocked if Alabama wins this game. I think it's going to be a hell of a game, at least right now. We'll see. But if Georgia plays Oregon, who wins that game?
I think Georgia beats anybody,
Yeah, so,
including Alabama, unless Alabama beats them Saturday, and I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I just think with a Georgia loss, you know, I think Michigan's locked in. I think Alabama would be locked in. Georgia's locked in, and then whoever you want. I don't really care.
And to that point, I'm a little pissed off that we could not fast forward this 12-team play.
Oh, I agree completely with you. I'd love to
You
have it.
could
this
have,
year.
though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
LT. We showed that we could rework an entire schedule in weeks, basically, back before the pandemic, right? We reworked a whole 10-game schedule on the fly and did the playoffs and all that and reduced crowds and all of that during a pandemic, right? So when we passed this 12-game thing, we had it ready to go way before the season started. You can't tell me we didn't change any TV partners or anything. It's still ESPN, ABC. You're telling me we couldn't have gone ahead and played this season with the 12-team
And
format?
do you
Sure we
think,
could have.
and would
It
anybody
would have been
have cared?
amazing.
Yeah.
Like if you
No.
ask Kirby Smart, he's
No.
not going to care.
He wouldn't care.
No,
No.
He would be thankful at this point. His team would be locked
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Locked in.
Yep.